The Champions for Care Committee of Missouri Baptist Healthcare Foundation is excited to present breast cancer research. Champions for Care are donors who support special projects focused on improving care for our patients. So you might want to consider joining our Champions for Care group. Our 2021 project is providing screenings on MOBAP's mammography van. The van serves about 3,400 patients a year where they live or work and assist roughly 1,000 uninsured patients a year in 31 counties in Missouri. Mammography and early detection have helped reduce breast cancer mortality in the U.S. by nearly a third since 1990. Many of us are aware that 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. When we are faced with a cancer diagnosis, we are looking for the best care and treatment. Science has proven that research holds the cancer answer. Tonight, we're going to hear, I'm so excited about this, Dr. Brian Fowler. Dr. Fowler is the Alan P. Liss Endowed Chair in Cancer Research at Missouri Baptist Medical Center. He is a principal investigator of the Heartland National Cancer Institute Community Oncology Program. Since entering the practice in 2011, he's been consistently engaged in clinical research as a recognized by the Platinum Certificate of Excellence from the National Cancer Institute. He holds committee appointments on national research groups, including the Alliance for Clinical Trials in Oncology, where he sits on the executive committee, board of directors, board of trustees, and respiratory committee. He also serves as an active member of the Scientific and Administrative Review Committee and Board of Directors for Academic and Community Research Unit based at the Mayo Clinic. Wow, what a prestigious speaker. I will turn it back over to you, Dr. Fowler, and I look forward to your presentation on clinical trials, the way to get better breast cancer care. Dr. Fowler.
You want me to share my content now? So I can
I am just, let me see if I can go ahead and, yeah, so you've got control. So you go. Thank you.
See. All right. Can you see this now? All right. Thank you. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming inside from yet another mild St. Louis summer day to listen to this talk. I'm sure you're enjoying the weather. So this is a kind of the key slide of my talk and the introduction. And this is a button actually that a lot of us wear at the Cancer Center that talks about one of the fundamental missions of our research program, which is to come up with cures for cancer. And that's kind of the first thing people think about. But really what we do, and kind of the take-home message that I'd like to give today, is that it's a lot more than that. And that we do research to get better, not just to get cures, but to get better at what we're doing. And even if we come up with cures, we can always get better at delivering them, at reducing the side effects from them, at preventing cancer from happening in the first place. So there's more, there's a lot more to it than that. And where we've advanced, we've seen a lot of advancements in cancer treatments and care in the last, 10 to 20 years in particular. And all of that has been because of very generous people participating in research studies, and that has been the only way we've gotten better, and it remains the only way that we can get better at what we're doing. Tonight, I wanted to address key questions these are kind of the frequently asked questions that I think I'm asked about when I tell people I run a research program. One is what kind of research study, what kind of trials do you guys do there? What are the different types? Who are they for? you know, how does this work? How do people come up with trials? How are they run? What's the oversight? What about placebos? You know, will I get a placebo if I'm on a study? What are they? Why would I want to participate? And also, why does a community hospital like MOBAP have a research program? And so we'll go through these. And some of this has, this talk has become a lot easier as people have seen what's happened with COVID and the research going on there. And I think a lot of people have learned a lot about research in the last 18 months as they've seen trials being run on vaccines and on drugs to treat COVID and on tests to diagnose COVID and so on and so forth. So I think this part of the talk has actually become easier. But, you know, in terms of the type of clinical trials, that first question, one of the main studies you'll think about right away is treatment studies. So coming up with new treatments or better treatments or cures for cancer. And as you've seen with the COVID vaccines, this starts with phase 1 studies, you know, looking at a small group of patients, mainly trying to figure out if it's safe and to come up with the right dose to go into bigger testing. You know, typically 15, 30 patients. I think with the first Pfizer vaccine trial, it was maybe 100 patients. And, you know, once they kind of get that down, they go on from there. They also are looking for a signal that it works in that small group of patients, although it's not the key objective of the phase 1 studies. Phase 2 is looking, you know, taking that to a larger patient population, but something that could be done cost efficiently and quickly in a larger group, looking, you know, for more information about safety and whether or not it works. That's often, you know, around 100 patients or so in oncology. And then, you know, once you've got something that you think looks successful and promising and safe, then it goes to the large, you know, phase 3 study, which could be at the order of 100 patients to several thousands of patients. It's really looking for these rare side effects. You know, the example in COVID vaccines is myocarditis, inflammation of the heart, that you know, there are 1 in a million side effects or 1 in 100,000 side effects that you're not going to see in a small group of patients. It's only when you look at a much larger study, and then you can get a much better sense of whether or not it works. You know, another thing that we look at, though, is cancer prevention. And, you know, I talked about it. It's, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth, you know, a pound of cure. And so if some of our studies are looking at ways to prevent cancer, ways to, in particular, breast cancer. We have studies looking at exercise programs, aspirin, looking at genetic testing to try and offer women mastectomies before they get cancer, women who are at a very high risk. We also look at early detection. What's the best way to find cancer before it's spread, before it's gotten to a large size, when it's easiest to deal with? There's a large study going on in mammography, looking at these newer 3D mammograms, seeing whether they're really better than the old standard 2D mammograms that we've been doing for many years. What about the side effects of our treatments or the symptoms that the cancer caused? We could always do better in managing that. So there are a large, almost half of what we do is looking at minimizing the side effects of our treatments, including financial tolls that it takes, so cancer diagnosis and treatments take on patients, and treating the symptoms that cancer may cause, the pain, the anxiety, the nausea, so on and so forth. And that's something we can do better in. And then another large type of research study that the National Cancer Institute recently prioritized is something called cancer care delivery research. There's a definition of it here on the screen. The simple way that I think about this is it's taking something that's been shown to work already in all the other types of research that I just talked about, and now finding the best way to implement it, how to get it out into the real world, into the communities where patients are seen most effectively. And one example of this that we did was actually looking at taking a smoking cessation intervention to patients coming in for a lung cancer screening test, time when they might be at a teachable moment. And also adjusting our electronic medical records so that it prompts us to order white blood cell stimulators when guidelines would suggest they be indicated, rather than relying on us to remember to put that in. Things like that. Also, things looking at the financial burdens of cancer fall into this category. So who are clinical trials for? Well, they're for anyone who has cancer, has had cancer, or could potentially get cancer. So they're not just for advanced cancer with no other options. They're really, we could always do better in any aspect of diagnosing cancer, preventing cancer, or treating cancer. And they're for newly diagnosed patients. They're for patients who haven't even been diagnosed with cancer, who might be at a high risk. The eligibility differs for each trial. So in terms of who's fit for a certain trial, it depends on what the study is looking at. It's focused on patient safety and also, the mechanisms of actions of the treatment. A drug that might be really hard on the kidneys, a patient who has kidney disease, it's probably not safe to study in them. How does an idea become a study? This, I think, when you're presented a research idea, it's hard to recognize kind of how much thought and consideration went into designing that study before it came to actually become available in the community. And it's a very extensive process with a lot of involvement of research, not only researchers, but also statisticians, community oncologists that see patients, and patients themselves. Patient advocates are involved. But it starts with someone coming up with an idea. It's often presented to an initial working group made up of all of these people. Then it goes to a National Cancer Institute steering committee. You heard that I sit on one for the lung cancer. Those are the people that all the ideas get funneled into, and we get to decide what goes forward as a study. And there's a very rigorous scientific review, and only the best studies kind of make it past that. And there's patient advocates, statisticians, community oncologists on this. Everyone needs to disclose any financial conflicts. And then after that, it goes to the National Cancer Institute. They help develop the protocol. It goes through something called a Central Institutional Review Board, which is based in the National Cancer Institute. But these are people that really do a deep dive into the details of the study to make sure that the informed consent document that patients read is entirely accurate with the actual study. They have to review any promotional materials to make sure those are entirely accurate. And again, it's made up with this large group of individuals. After the study gets up and going, there's a lot of oversight. Some studies have built-in early stopping rules. What that means is that if they look at the first 20 patients who go through the study and they see a sign of it being too toxic, the study just stops. At that point, automatically, it's kind of built into the study. Or if they don't see any signal of benefit in the first 20 patients, they stop the study. There's also something called a data safety monitoring board, which even if these rules aren't built in, they're constantly looking at the data. They don't see patients' names, but it's all de-identified, but they look at the data, see if there's any signal that one intervention in the study is better than the other, or one's more toxic than the other. And if there's any issues, they stop the study. There's this institutional review board constantly reviews what the data safety monitoring board is doing. So there's kind of oversight of the people that are doing the oversight. We are notified of any issues. So your research team, we're constantly reviewing any toxicity that's been seen on studies. They're constantly keeping us up to date. And then ultimately they publish this they have to publish and show their results and then have that reviewed by other researchers and their peers. And that's very rigorous as well. So there's a lot of oversight that goes into these things. What about placebos? People always ask about this or concerned about it. And this is a comic that I think gets at the concern that you're kind of getting nothing when you're getting a placebo. But first of all, in a study where we're treating cancer, there's almost never a placebo. We're looking to see if the treatment works or not, and there's not really a placebo effect in that. You know, either the cancer goes away and doesn't come back, or a person lives for a certain amount of time, or they don't. There's not really a placebo effect. If there is a placebo, it's only in addition to whatever the best effective treatment is decided by all of these people that are going into designing the trial. Experts at academic institutions and community hospitals, and it's never instead of best effective treatment. In a symptom management study, that's more likely where you'll see a placebo. We might have a few placebo-controlled studies out of the 100+ studies we have now, and that's mainly if the outcome of the study is difficult to objectively measure. For example, what's your pain level? You have to tell us that. And so there could be a placebo. There is a placebo effect for studies of pain or fatigue and things like that. We've all been, nauseated or had diarrhea or had pain just watching the news about COVID, and that's mind over matter. That the mind is a powerful thing. Again, this is only in addition to the best effective treatment if it's given. It's never instead. We never say you don't get any nausea medicine, you just get a placebo. That's unethical. And this gets at kind of another concern I think people have is, we're kind of playing a trick on you if you're giving a placebo. But it gets at an important point too, which is that the point of a placebo, and sometimes in a study, is to see what side effects are actually caused by the intervention, the drug, versus the condition that we're treating, the cancer, or the placebo effect. And so when we're starting someone on a pill, if I'm telling a patient about a new treatment, I want to tell them what side effects that the drug may actually cause. And the way to separate that from symptoms that people are having from their cancer for other things is to do this placebo-controlled study, where half the people get the drug, half the people get the placebo, and then you see whether there actually is a difference in pain and nausea between the patients getting the drug or whatever side effect you're interested in. So why participate in a clinical trial? Well, like I said, it's the only way we get better. This is a way that you can contribute to the greater good, advance our ability to help other people. It also may give you the ability, it generally gives you the ability to receive the best cancer care available today as determined by national experts. All these people that go into the design of the study, they're putting in their best treatment, what they think is the best as the control arm of these studies. And, you're always getting, on a study, you're getting something in addition to that, potentially, or subtracted from that if it's a study looking at potentially dialing back the intensity of a treatment when we've already come up with cures. The other reason to participate is you may be among the first to benefit from a treatment that's coming down the pipe. A lot of these novel treatments are provided at no cost. Insurance generally has to cover the cost of care in a clinical trial. And also, whether you get the experimental arm on the study or not, we think it's better care. And there's evidence to support this. And part of it is because of the number 2 bullet point up here. You're going to be receiving the best care available today as determined by these panel of experts. But there's a number of studies that have shown that this actually works. One is looking at rural, this is a study looking at rural patients that go on clinical trials or who don't. Rural patients typically live far away from academic centers. And, so it's typically, it's community hospitals, and we have outreach sites at rural centers that offer clinical trials that provide care for patients. And it's been shown that if a patient in a rural location participates in a study compared to not, they tend to have better outcomes overall with their cancer, whether they're getting the experimental arm in the study or not. This is just if they participate. This is another study that was in lung cancer, showing that clinical trial participation improved survival in patients with metastatic lung cancer. And this, I think, is a very important study that shows that just being studied could help you. The mere process of being studied could help you. And what this study here is done, this was done at Harvard University. Was picked as one of the top presentations at our annual meeting a few years ago. This was a study where half the patients, this was in patients with advanced cancer, metastatic cancer, mostly were receiving chemotherapy. And in half the patients in the study, they just asked them to report their symptoms once a week. They checked in with them, they got a text, a message to say, rate your nausea from 1 to 10, rate whether you're having diarrhea, are you having pain, so on and so forth. And the other group just did what they normally do, which is, here's the number to call the clinic if you're having a problem, come to your appointments. Is what the standard of care was. And most of our, a lot of our studies have this patient-reported symptom monitoring built into them. Whether you're on the experimental arm or not, there's weekly check-ins. We have research staff that contact you. Some of this is done by text or email, but you get this monitoring. And in this study, there was no extra drug given, no extra treatment given, just this monitoring. And the patients that got it lived on average 5 months longer than the patients who did it. So the mere act of being studied and checked in on so that we can kind of catch things early can help you live longer. These patients had fewer complications, fewer hospitalizations. They got into trouble less often because of that. And that's, something that we can do on clinical trials that is above what we do in standard practice. Although we did do a larger study of that, Missouri Baptist was a big participant in that was kind of the phase 2 version of that. We did the phase 3 study at Missouri Baptist, which we were allowed to get 30 patients on the study. We got them all on. We're waiting for the results of that. So why conduct research in the community? That's where the patients are. 70 to 85% of cancer care is provided in the community. So if you want to answer a question quickly, you'll do it 4 times quickly if you do it in the community, as opposed to just at academic centers. Oncology has been really advanced in doing community research. It's kind of the main research program we have at Missouri Baptist, although a few other specialties have gotten into it. This gives access to larger, more diverse patient populations. This is the only way to study rural patient populations, for instance, and they may have different types of cancer. They've got different issues facing them, different barriers to receiving care. So learning how treatments work in rural communities or more older patients that aren't able to access academic centers, we learn how better to treat those patients. This gives us access to real-world healthcare delivery settings. It allows us to test the feasibility of implementing new interventions where most of the cancer care is provided in the community. And it also accelerates the uptake of new interventions. So once a new drug gets approved by the FDA, it helps if we've done the study and I've already experienced it, or I already have experience using it. So we're more likely to use it to start using it right away for all of our other patients if we've had experience with it on trial. It also improves the applicability of the results. And the bottom line is we like to participate. We want to provide our patients with opportunities to participate in state-of-the-art research studies while they're staying close to family, friends, and support systems and their physicians in the community. So Missouri Baptist has a grant to do community research. It's called an NCORE Award, which is this National Cancer Institute Community Oncology Research Program. There's only 46 of these grants awarded throughout the country, and this map shows them. The blue are community sites. The triangles are community sites that have a high minority or underserved patient population and have a special designation. Our dot is actually in the center of Illinois in Decatur, which is where we share the grant with a big group there. We receive about a quarter of the grant. There are several other institutions throughout Illinois that also receive the grant. There's one other recipient in Springfield, Missouri, and the University of Kansas in Kansas City also is a recipient nearby. This is the map of our NCORE and all the counties that we provide when you put together all of our practices. So it spans close to Chicago, the Quad Cities, all the way down to Cape Girardeau. We are one of the top NCOREs in the country when it comes to accruals and a lot of different distinctions. We are in the top, 3 generally of every organization that runs trials, and we, receive one of the top 5 largest grants in the country. We've had a lot of awards for our participations in studies, and we've had a lot of investigators go on to high positions in the national committees that help shape what clinical trials are run. Not just me, but several other members in our organization. We have currently over 100 National Cancer Institute sponsored studies at Missouri Baptist that are open and actively enrolling. We've got about 50 more that are just in follow-up right now that have finished enrolling. We were awarded a special study from the National Cancer Institute from a funding that was part of the 21st Century Cures Act and named after President Biden's son, Beau Biden, the Beau Biden Cancer Moonshot. And we had, what this study is it's collecting tissue before we start someone on a targeted therapy, analyzing the genetics of it, and then seeing how a patient does, and seeing if those genetics would predict how they did, whether it predicts whether they did really well or really poorly, so that we could use that to pick the best treatments for other people. These patients also get a second biopsy if that treatment stops working at some point, and they again look at the genetics of the cancer and see what's changed to lead it to kind of overcome the treatment, to help come up with better treatments to prevent that from happening, or what to do when that happens. We were one of 10 sites. Missouri Baptist, actually, Heartland NCORE was one of 10 institutions selected for the pilot study of this. We were the highest accruing site in the country, and we're now doing the follow-up to the study now in a 2,000 patient study. We also have a special blood biomarker trial, which recently closed the first part. It's going to reopen again. But it's looking to see if there's a blood signal of cancer to aid in early diagnosis. We draw a tube of blood in anyone who's been recently diagnosed with cancer to see if there's a blood signal. And the goal is to use that, particularly for people that have a high risk of developing cancer, as maybe part of their annual physical, they get a blood test to screen them for cancer too, in addition to mammograms and colonoscopies and all the other stuff. We have a website, mobapcancerresearch.org. I invite you to go on there and you can see what trials we have available. It's sorted by disease type, and it'll give you some more information about our program. And with that, I'll take questions.
Well, while everybody's thinking about a question, I want to thank Dr. Brian Fowler, our Champions for Care Committee, for helping to educate the community MOBAP serves. And I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I'm truly amazed at the knowledge, innovative therapies, and progress in breast cancer care we've heard tonight. And Dr. Fowler, we are just thrilled that you are on the MOBAP team. All the credentials, it's just amazing to me. So anyway, back to you for any of those questions for our speaker.